There she stood on my porch, my daughter-in-law Clarissa, with her manicured nails wrapped around a clipboard and a stranger in a grey suit beside her. The autumn sun was barely up, casting long shadows across the azaleas I'd planted with Lionel 20 years ago. She didn't knock, didn't call ahead. Just showed up like she owned the place. Which, apparently, she thought she did. "Delphine, you need to sign these papers." Her voice was smooth, practiced. Too smooth. "The house is sold. We've already arranged a bed for you at Brookhaven Nursing Home. You'll be more comfortable there." The words hung in the air like smoke. My house. The one where I raised my son. Where I buried my husband's ashes under the oak tree out back. Where every creaky floorboard knew my footsteps and every wall held memories she couldn't possibly understand. A nursing home. Like I was already dead. My hand gripped the brass door handle so tight I could feel the cold metal digging into my palm. My knees wanted to buckle, but I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Because here's what 70 years on this earth teaches you: panic is a gift to your enemy. Calm is your armor. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, someone who smiled at your table while plotting behind your back, keep listening. What happened next changed everything. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. So I smiled. Not wide, just enough to let her know I was still standing. Still here. Still very much alive. "Perfect," I said, my voice steady as stone. "Let's stop at the police station first. They're very interested in what I sent them about you." The notary blinked. Once. Twice. His pen froze mid-air like someone had hit pause on a movie. Clarissa's smile cracked down the middle, and for just a second, I saw something flicker behind those calculating eyes. Fear. Real fear. The clipboard trembled in her hands. "What are you talking about?" She tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Hollow. "Delphine, you're confused. Let's just go inside and—" "I'm not confused." I kept my eyes locked on hers. "The forged deed. The bank inquiry you filed in my son's name. The supplemental filing you uploaded from your office computer while I was in the hospital. Should I go on, or would you rather explain it to Detective Morrison yourself?" The color drained from her face. The notary took a step back, suddenly very interested in his shoes. See, Clarissa had made one critical mistake. She thought I was just some lonely old widow, too grief-stricken and frail to notice her hands slipping into my life, rearranging the pieces, rewriting the story until I disappeared completely. She counted on my silence. My isolation. My exhaustion. She didn't count on the fact that librarians know how to research. That we keep records. That we understand the power of documentation. And she definitely didn't count on what I'd been doing for the past 3 months while she thought I was just watering flowers and watching game shows. The morning air felt different now. Sharper. The notary cleared his throat. "Mrs. Foster, perhaps we should reschedule." "No." Clarissa's voice was ice. "No, this is just a misunderstanding. Delphine, you're not thinking clearly. The stress, your age." My age is 72, not 92, and my mind is sharp enough to spot a fraud when it's standing on my porch. I stepped forward, and she stepped back. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your fake papers and your notary friend and leave my property. Then you're going to call your lawyer, because you're going to need one." Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again like a fish gasping for air. "And Clarissa?" I leaned in close enough to see the tiny cracks in her foundation makeup. "Tell Everett his mother says hello. I'll be calling him next." They left. The notary practically ran to his car. Clarissa followed, her heels clicking frantically on the walkway, that perfect posture finally crumbling. I closed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up. I pressed my back against the solid wood and slid down until I was sitting on the floor of my own entryway, my own home, the one they tried to steal. But here's what you need to understand. This moment, this confrontation, this wasn't the beginning. It was the ending of a much longer, darker story. And the real question isn't how I stood up to her that morning. The real question is how I knew. How I caught her. How a 72-year-old widow managed to outsmart a woman half her age who'd been planning this for over a year. And that's where this story really begins. Not with the showdown on my porch, but with the loneliness that came after Lionel died. With the quiet ways Clarissa started erasing me from my own life. With the night I couldn't sleep and found something hidden in Lionel's desk that changed everything. But you won't believe what led to this moment. How a random Tuesday at the county library and a woman named Rena saved my life. How a trail of digital breadcrumbs told a story Clarissa thought she'd hidden perfectly. How the smallest details, the ones everyone overlooks, became the evidence that brought her entire scheme crashing down. Would you have seen the signs? Would you have stayed calm like I did, or would you have confronted her the moment suspicion crept in? Drop a comment below and let me know, because what happened next tested every ounce of strength I had left. The house felt different after Lionel died. Not just quiet. Empty in a way that pressed against my chest every morning when I woke up alone. His coffee mug still sat in the cabinet, the one with the chipped handle he refused to throw away. His reading glasses were on the nightstand, folded carefully like he'd just set them down. Sometimes I'd catch myself setting the table for two before remembering. The grief was heavy, sure. But I could carry grief. What I couldn't carry was the way my own son started looking at me like I was already gone. Everett came around less after the funeral. Always had an excuse. Work deadline. Traffic. Something. And when he did show up, Clarissa was always with him, her eyes scanning my living room like she was mentally calculating square footage. "Mom, you're rattling around in this big house," Everett said one Sunday afternoon. We were sitting in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd packed his school lunches for 12 years. "Have you thought about downsizing?" Downsizing. Like my life was something that needed to fit into a smaller box. "I like my house," I said simply. Clarissa touched his arm. "Of course you do, Delphine. It's just that maintaining a property like this at your age." She let the sentence trail off, like the rest was too obvious to say out loud. At my age. I was 72, not helpless. But that's how it started. Little comments. Gentle suggestions. A slow erosion of my autonomy disguised as concern. The mail started arriving opened. Just a tear here and there, easy to miss. "Oh, it must have gotten damaged in the mailbox," Clarissa would say, sliding envelopes onto my kitchen table with a sympathetic smile. She offered to help with my bills. "You have so much on your plate, Delphine. Let me take some of the burden off your shoulders." Her voice was honey-sweet, but something underneath felt sticky. I said no the first time. The second time. By the third time, I was so tired from not sleeping, so worn down from the loneliness, that I gave her my bank login to pay the electric bill. Just once, I told myself. That's how they get you. One yes at a time. Everett stopped calling as much. When I'd phone him at work, his assistant would say he was in a meeting. When I'd text, he'd respond hours later with something brief. "Busy day, Mom. Talk soon." Soon never came. I started eating dinner alone at 5:30 because cooking for one at 7 felt too sad. The television became my companion. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it used to. Outside, the street lamp would flicker on at dusk, and I'd watch the neighbors come home to lit windows and laughter while mine stayed dark except for the blue glow of whatever show I wasn't really watching. One evening, Clarissa stopped by unannounced. She walked through my living room slowly, her fingers trailing along the mantelpiece where Lionel's photo sat in a silver frame. "This is beautiful craftsmanship," she said, examining the carved wood. "Antique, isn't it? My grandmother's. You could get a good price for something like this." She smiled. Not warm. Appraising. "If you ever wanted to simplify." Simplify. Another word for erase. She moved to the bay window, looking out at the garden. "And all this yard work, Delphine. It must be exhausting. Have you thought about what happens if you fall out there? Who would find you?" The question landed like a stone in my stomach. She was painting a picture. Frail old woman. Alone. Vulnerable. One accident away from disaster. I started noticing other things too. Papers I didn't remember signing mixed in with grocery coupons. Account statements showing small charges I didn't recognize. When I asked about them, Clarissa had explanations ready. "That's the new service fee. That's the automatic renewal you approved last month." But I didn't remember approving anything. The isolation crept in like fog. Church friends called less. My book club dissolved when Martha moved to Florida. Even the mailman, who used to chat, now just dropped the mail and left. My world was shrinking to the size of this house, and the only people who came through the door were measuring it for something I couldn't quite see yet. One night, I sat at the kitchen table with Lionel's old fountain pen in my hand. The weight of it felt familiar, comforting. He used to write me notes with this pen, little messages tucked into my lunch when he'd pack it for my early library shifts. "Have a good day, Delegate, love you always." Always felt like a long time ago. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Outside, that street lamp flickered again, throwing shadows across the wall. And in that moment, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I was disappearing. Not dying, but fading. Being slowly erased from my own life while everyone nodded sympathetically and called it care. And the worst part? I'd been letting it happen. I thought grief was my enemy. I didn't know it was opening the door for something much worse. Clarissa started showing up with coffee. I was in the neighborhood, she'd say, though my neighborhood wasn't on the way to anywhere she needed to be. She'd sit at my kitchen table, scrolling through her phone while I sipped from the paper cup she'd brought. Caramel macchiato. Not even my order, but I drank it anyway because refusing felt rude. "I've been thinking," she'd say, not looking up, "about your future. About what's best." What's best? As if I'd forgotten how to decide that for myself. She brought pamphlets. Glossy ones with photos of smiling elderly people in coordinated outfits, playing cards in sunny rooms that looked more like hotel lobbies than homes. Just to look at. No pressure. But pressure doesn't always come with force. Sometimes it comes with repetition. With the slow drip of suggestion until you start questioning your own reality. One afternoon, she asked for my insurance papers. "Just to review your coverage, make sure you're protected." I hesitated, but she'd already opened the file drawer like she knew exactly where I kept them. "When did you last update your beneficiaries?" she asked, flipping through pages. "I don't know. Lionel handled most of that." "Exactly." She looked at me with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so calculated. "We should fix that. Get everything current. You wouldn't want things to be complicated later." Later. She said it like my death was a scheduled appointment we were planning around. I noticed her taking photos. My living room. The original hardwood floors. The crown-molding Lionel had restored himself one summer. She'd hold up her phone casually, angling for the best light, and when I asked what she was doing, she'd laugh. "Just memories, Delphine. This house is so beautiful. I want to remember it." Remember it. Not visit it. Remember it. Past tense. Everett came by the following week, but something was off. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Kept checking his phone. When I asked him about work, he gave one-word answers. Is everything okay? I asked. Fine, Mom. Just busy. Clarissa emerged from my hallway. I hadn't even heard her go back there. I was just checking the water pressure in the guest bathroom, she said. It's really weak. That could be a whole pipe issue. Expensive. Everett nodded like this information mattered to him. You know, Clarissa continued, settling into the couch like it was hers, we've been talking about your options. There are some really wonderful communities where you wouldn't have to worry about pipe repairs or yard maintenance or any of this. We've been talking. About me. Without me. I like my house, I said again, firmer this time. Of course you do. Clarissa smiled. But liking something and being able to manage it are two different things. Everett shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we're just concerned. You're here alone. What if something happens? I have a phone. I have neighbors. Neighbors who work all day. Clarissa leaned forward. Delphine, we love you. We're trying to help. Love. The word felt wrong in her mouth. After they left, I found one of my bank statements on the printer. I didn't print it. Didn't even know they'd been near my office. But there it was, with notes scribbled in the margin. Numbers circled. Calculations I didn't make. I called the bank the next morning. I need to verify who has access to my accounts, I told the woman on the phone. There was typing. A pause. It looks like you added an authorized user 3 months ago. A Clarissa Foster. My stomach dropped. I didn't authorize that. Well, the paperwork was filed with your signature, ma'am. Would you like me to fax you a copy? I couldn't breathe. My signature. But I never signed anything like that. I would have remembered. The fax came through an hour later. And there it was. My name, in handwriting that looked close enough to mine that I understood how they'd been fooled. The date was from April, when I'd been in the hospital overnight after a dizzy spell. Someone had signed my name while I was unconscious. I sat in my office, staring at that forged signature, and realized the truth I'd been too lonely and tired to see. This wasn't care. This was theft. Calculated, methodical theft dressed up in concern and coffee dates. They were taking my house, my accounts, my life. And they were doing it with paperwork, not weapons, which made it legal enough that no one would question it until it was too late. I traced the signature with my finger, the way the R in row curved just slightly wrong. The way the D was too perfect, like someone had practiced it. My hands shook. Not from age or weakness, but from fury. That's when I knew, silence would kill me faster than age ever could. If I didn't fight back now, if I didn't find proof of what they were doing, I would disappear into one of those glossy nursing home pamphlets and my house would be sold before anyone realized I'd been erased. Then one night, while searching for something to ground me, I stumbled onto the first real clue of their entire scheme. I couldn't sleep. Again. The third night in a row where I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, questioning my own memory. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up. I walked downstairs in my nightgown and made chamomile tea I wouldn't drink. The house creaked around me, settling into its bones the way old houses do. Lionel's roll-top desk sat in the corner of the living room, untouched since he died. I'd avoided it, honestly. Opening it felt like disturbing a grave. But that night, desperate for something solid to hold on to, I pulled up the wooden chair and rolled back the top. His handwriting was everywhere. Notes on yellow legal pads. Receipts rubber-banded together. A half-finished crossword puzzle in his careful print. I touched each item like it might conjure him back. That's when I saw the file folder wedged behind a stack of old tax returns. Dark green, unlabeled. I pulled it out and opened it under the desk lamp. Inside were copies of our original house deed. Insurance policies with both our names. A copy of Lionel's will, leaving everything to me. Standard stuff, the kind of paperwork you file away and forget about. But underneath was something that didn't belong. A letter from First National Bank, dated 3 months earlier. March 15th. My hands went cold as I read. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Foster, thank you for your preliminary inquiry regarding the transfer of ownership for the property located at 428 Maple Drive. As requested, we have begun the process of reviewing the current deed and preparing documentation for the transition. Please contact our office to schedule an appointment to finalize the necessary signatures and notarization. Mr. and Mrs. Foster. Not Mr. and Mrs. Rowe. Everett and Clarissa Foster. My property. My house. But my name wasn't on the inquiry. Only theirs. I read it again. Then again. The words didn't change. Someone had contacted the bank about transferring my house into Everett and Clarissa's names, and the bank thought it was legitimate enough to begin processing. The paper trembled in my hands. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was a plan. A detailed, intentional plan to take my home from me while I was still alive. I kept digging through the folder. There was more. A printed email exchange between an address I didn't recognize and someone at the county recorder's office, asking about expedited processing for elderly transfers. Another document that looked like a draft power of attorney, with my name at the top but language I'd never seen before. Someone had been building a paper trail. Creating a legal story where I'd agreed to give up everything, where I'd signed away my rights, where my own son and his wife could claim they were just following my wishes. I spread the documents across the desk like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what this was. A crime. Fraud. Elder abuse dressed up in notary stamps and official letterhead. My chest felt tight. Not from panic, but from clarity. This was real. This was happening. And if I didn't act, if I didn't find more proof and stop them, I would lose everything Lionel and I had built. The clock on the wall showed 3:17 in the morning. Outside, the world was dark and silent. But inside my head, everything was finally terrifyingly clear. I thought about all those opened letters. The bank access I'd authorized. The insurance papers Clarissa had reviewed. Every single interaction had been a step in their plan. Isolate me. Make me seem confused. Gain legal access. Forge what they couldn't manipulate me into signing. Then move me out and sell the house before anyone questioned it. It was theft disguised as procedure. And it had been happening right in front of me while I was too grief-stricken and lonely to see it. I gathered the documents carefully, my librarian training kicking in. Date order. Copies needed. Chain of evidence. If I was going to fight this, I needed to be methodical. Emotional reactions wouldn't save me. Facts would. But I also knew something else. I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't go to Everett, obviously. Couldn't trust family. Couldn't even be sure which of my old friends might accidentally mention something to the wrong person. I needed someone outside this mess. Someone who understood law and property and the kind of people who prey on widows in big houses. As dawn broke through the window, painting everything gold and pink, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront them yet. Wouldn't tip my hand. Instead, I'd gather evidence. Build my own case. And find someone who could help me fight back before Clarissa showed up with more papers and a smile. My fingers traced the bank letter one more time. The paper felt thin, almost delicate. But the truth it held was solid as steel. Someone had tried to rewrite my life with the stroke of a pen. Now I needed to rewrite it back. And that's when I realized, silence would kill me faster than age. The time for quiet grief was over. The time for action had begun. I didn't go to family. Blood wasn't safe anymore. I went somewhere no one would think to look. Somewhere quiet and filled with the kind of knowledge that doesn't advertise itself. The county library. My old territory. I'd worked there for 30 years before retiring, knew every section by heart. But I wasn't there for books that Tuesday morning. I was there for the community resource board near the back entrance, the one covered in flyers for food banks and legal aid clinics and support groups. That's where I found the notice. Free legal consultation. Property rights and elder advocacy. Saturdays 10 to 2. Ask for Rena. I took a photo with my phone, hands still shaky from 3 cups of coffee and no sleep. Saturday felt like years away, but I used the time. I made copies of everything I'd found. The bank letter. The forged signature. The email exchanges. I created a timeline, dating every suspicious interaction I could remember. When Clarissa first asked for my bank login. When the mail started arriving opened. When Everett stopped calling. Facts. Evidence. The kind of documentation that couldn't be dismissed as an old woman's confusion. When Saturday came, I arrived at the library at 9:45. Too early, but I couldn't sit in that house anymore, couldn't risk Clarissa showing up unannounced with more papers for me to sign. The legal aid table was set up in the community room. Behind it sat a woman maybe 45, with thick black-rimmed glasses and gray streaking through her dark hair. She was laughing at something on her laptop, the sound bright and unguarded. I almost turned around. She looked too young, too cheerful to understand what I was facing. But then she looked up and smiled. Hi there. I'm Rena Morales. Are you here for the legal clinic? Her voice had warmth in it. Real warmth, not the practiced kind Clarissa used. I sat down across from her, my folder of documents clutched to my chest. I think my daughter-in-law is trying to steal my house. Most people would have raised an eyebrow, asked me to slow down, suggested I might be confused. Rena didn't do any of that. She leaned forward, pulled out a legal pad, and said, "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Lionel dying, about the loneliness, about Clarissa's visits and the opened mail and the bank access I didn't authorize. I showed her the forged signature on the bank document, the letter about the ownership transfer, the draft power of attorney. Rena listened without interrupting, took notes in neat handwriting, and when I finished, she didn't pat my hand or tell me everything would be okay. She said, "This isn't a mistake. It's a paper trail. And if we follow it, we'll find the whole scheme." Those words. Simple, direct, believing me completely. I almost cried. "You said the forged document was dated in April?" Rena flipped through the papers. "And you were in the hospital that day?" "Overnight. Dizzy spell. They kept me for observation." "Do you have the hospital records?" "I think so. In my files at home." "Get them. We need to prove you couldn't have signed this document because you were physically somewhere else." She made a note. "And this bank letter about the ownership transfer. Did you keep the envelope it came in?" "Yes. Everything's still in the folder where Lionel kept it." "Good. We'll need to look at the postmark, the dates, cross-reference everything." She met my eyes. "Delphine, what they're doing is called deed theft. It's more common than people think, especially targeting elderly homeowners. And it's absolutely illegal." Hearing it named made it real. Not paranoia. Not confusion. An actual crime with an actual name. Can we stop them? I asked. We can try. Rena pulled out her phone. I need to connect you with someone. A retired property attorney who volunteers with our clinic. His name is Mr. Halvorsen, and he's handled cases like this before. Are you okay if I call him now? I nodded. She stepped away, speaking quietly into her phone. Through the library windows, I could see normal people doing normal Saturday things. Returning books. Checking out movies. Living lives where their own children weren't trying to erase them. Rena came back. He can meet us here in an hour. In the meantime, I need you to not sign anything else. Don't accept any papers from Clarissa. Don't talk to her about the house. Can you do that? Yes. And Delphine. She touched my hand briefly. You're not alone anymore. We're going to fight this. Mr. Halvorsen arrived exactly 1 hour later. He was older than I expected, maybe 80, with white hair and a cardigan that had seen better days. He moved slowly, but his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. He read through my documents without speaking, held the forged signature up to the light, examined the bank letter front and back. Finally, he set everything down and looked at me. How much do you know about property law? He asked. Nothing. Good. That's honest. He tapped the bank letter. What they're attempting is complex fraud. They need several things to succeed. Your signature or a convincing forgery. Legal access to your accounts and property records. And time. Time for you to not notice or not fight back. I'm fighting back now. I can see that. He almost smiled. The question is, are you ready for how ugly this might get? They're going to claim you're confused. That you're not competent. That they're trying to protect you. Let them claim whatever they want. I have proof. We have proof, Rena corrected gently. And we're going to get more. Mr. Halvorsen pulled out his own legal pad, older and more worn than Rena's. First, we file for a property freeze. It's temporary, but it means no sale can go forward until the signatures are verified. Second, we need to examine every document at the county recorder's office with your name on it. See what else they might have filed. Third, we document everything going forward. Every conversation, every interaction. The more we dug, the clearer the pattern became. Isolate. Control. Erase. But they hadn't counted on one thing. They hadn't counted on me finding people who believed me, who saw through the performance to the crime underneath, who understood that quiet, methodical evil was still evil. We worked through lunch, building a strategy. Rena made phone calls. Mr. Halvorsen drafted a motion for the property freeze. And I sat there, surrounded by my old library, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the fragile kind that breaks at the first setback. The stubborn kind. The kind that digs in and doesn't let go. When we finally packed up at 3 o'clock, Mr. Halvorsen handed me his card. Call me if anything happens. Anything at all. I took it, along with copies of everything we'd prepared. Thank you. Both of you. Rena walked me to my car. We're filing the property freeze motion Monday morning. The judge should rule within 48 hours. Until then, lay low. Don't engage. I won't. She hesitated. Delphine? You did the right thing coming here. A lot of people don't. They're too embarrassed or they think they won't be believed. But you fought back. I thought about that on the drive home. About how close I'd come to not fighting. To just accepting that this was how my story ended. Alone, erased, forgotten. But the judge didn't even look up when he said, "Granted." And that single word cracked Clarissa's whole plan wide open. The county recorder's office smelled like old paper and floor polish. Mr. Halvorsen and I stood at the counter while a clerk with tired eyes pulled up records on her computer. "Property address?" she asked without looking up. "428 Maple Drive." Her fingers clicked across the keyboard, then stopped. She frowned, leaned closer to the screen, and clicked something else. "Ha," she muttered. "What is it?" Mr. Halvorsen asked. "There's a supplemental filing here dated April 19th. Transfer of deed interest. But there's also a flag on it now from the court. No transactions permitted pending verification." That was our property freeze. Judge Morrison had granted it Monday morning, exactly like Rena said he would. No dramatics, no questions. Just granted, and a stamp on the paperwork. But April 19th. That date stuck in my mind like a splinter. "Can we see that filing?" Mr. Halvorsen asked. The clerk printed it out. 3 pages of legal language that basically said I was transferring partial ownership of my house to Everett and Clarissa Foster. And there, at the bottom, was my signature. Except it wasn't. Not really. I held the paper up to the fluorescent lights. The signature looked right at first glance. But the pressure was wrong. The way I always loop the P in Delphine was missing. And the date beside it, April 19th, was the day I'd been admitted to Memorial Hospital for that dizzy spell. "I need the hospital records," I told Mr. Halvorsen. "The ones showing I was there that day." "Already requested them." He took the document from me, studying it with those sharp old eyes. "But this is good, Delphine. This proves they filed fraudulent documents." The clerk was watching us now, curiosity replacing boredom. "Is there a problem with this deed?" "Yes," Mr. Halvorsen said simply. "A significant one. We'll need copies of every document filed on this property for the last 12 months. She hesitated. "That's going to take some time." "We have time." While she printed, Mr. Halvorsen and I sat in the plastic chairs by the window. Outside, people walked by with coffee cups and shopping bags, living normal Tuesday afternoons. I wondered if any of them knew how easy it was to lose everything. How a few forged signatures could erase a lifetime. "There's more, isn't there?" I asked quietly. "More documents they filed?" "Probably." He didn't sugarcoat it. People who do this kind of fraud don't stop at one document. They create layers. Backup plans. That way if one piece gets questioned, they have others to fall back on. The clerk returned with a stack of papers 2 inches thick. Everything filed on that property since last January. We took them to a table in the corner and started going through them one by one. Most were normal. Tax assessments. Utility easements. But then, tucked in the middle, we found it. A power of attorney document. Dated February 8th. Giving Clarissa Foster full authority to make financial and legal decisions on my behalf in the event of my incapacity. "I never signed this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Halvorsen examined it. The signature's different from the deed transfer. They probably practiced between attempts, got better at forging your handwriting. "How is this legal? How did no one catch this?" "Because clerks process hundreds of documents a day. They're not forensic analysts. If a signature looks close enough and the notary stamp is there, it goes through." He set the paper down. "But look at the notary information." I looked. The stamp was from someone named J. Whitmore, Notary Public, with a commission number and expiration date. "We can check if this notary actually exists," Mr. Halvorsen said. "And if they do, whether they remember notarizing your signature." My guess? Either the notary is fake, or Clarissa had someone notarize her own signature while claiming to be you. My hands clenched into fists. The anger was hot now, burning away the last of my grief fog. They'd been so careful, so methodical, building a legal cage around me while I watered my azaleas and ate dinner alone. What else? I asked. What else did they file? We found 2 more documents. One was a quitclaim deed, not yet filed but prepared and scanned into the system as a draft. It would transfer full ownership to Everett and Clarissa, bypassing me entirely. The other was a letter of intent to sell, addressed to a real estate company I'd never heard of. They'd been planning every step. Not just taking my house, but selling it quickly before anyone could intervene. Then moving me into that nursing home where I'd be isolated, confused, and by the time I figured out what happened, it would be too late. We need to report this, I said. To the police. This is fraud. It is. But we need to be strategic. Mr. Halvorsen gathered the documents carefully. First, we get the hospital records proving you couldn't have signed the April document. Then we trace the notary. Then we look at metadata. Metadata. Electronic fingerprints. These documents were scanned and uploaded. Every digital file contains information about where it was created, what computer, what software. If we can prove these were created on Clarissa's computer, that's evidence. Hope mixed with rage in my chest. We had a path forward. Not just defense, but offense. The clerk made copies of everything. 47 pages total. Proof that someone had been systematically erasing my legal existence. On the drive home, Mr. Halvorsen was quiet. Then he said, "You know they're going to fight this. When we challenge these documents, they'll claim you're confused. Possibly incompetent. They might even try to have you evaluated. Let them try. It won't be pleasant, Delphine." Nothing about this has been pleasant. I stared out the window at the familiar streets of my town. But I'm not confused. I'm not incompetent. And I'm done being quiet. He almost smiled. Good. Because quiet is what they're counting on. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't from loneliness or fear. It was from planning. From knowing that soon, very soon, Clarissa would realize her perfect scheme was unraveling. And I wanted to be ready when she did. The judge didn't slam the gavel dramatically. He barely looked up. But when he said granted, my chest loosened for the first time in months. Quiet justice had begun. The hospital records arrived Wednesday morning. 23 pages documenting my admission on April 19th at 4:15 in the afternoon and discharge the following morning at 11. The deed transfer had been notarized at 2:30 that afternoon. While I was lying in a hospital bed with an 4 in my arm, someone was signing my name 15 miles away. Rena spread the documents across her dining room table. She'd invited me over, said we needed space to work that wasn't the library or Mr. Halvorsen's cluttered office. This is ironclad, she said, comparing the timestamps. You physically could not have signed this. So what happens now? Now we file a police report. And we send copies to the district attorney's office. What they did isn't just civil fraud, Delphine. It's criminal. The weight of that word hung in the air. Criminal. My son could be charged with a crime. My daughter-in-law could face prosecution. Part of me felt sick. But a bigger part felt something else. Relief. Because naming it, making it official, meant I wasn't crazy. Wasn't confused. Wasn't some paranoid old woman seeing threats that didn't exist. I want to do it, I said. File the report. Rena nodded. I'll call Detective Morrison. She handles elder fraud cases. She's good. While Rena made the call, I walked to her kitchen window. Outside, kids were playing basketball in a driveway. A dog barked. Normal life, continuing like it always did, while my world was being quietly dismantled and rebuilt. Detective Morrison arrived an hour later. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with her hair pulled back tight and eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Rowe," she said, shaking my hand. "I've reviewed the preliminary information Ms. Morales sent over. I need to hear everything in your own words." So I told the story again. Start to finish. Lionel's death, the isolation, Clarissa's visits, the opened mail, the bank access, finding the documents in Lionel's desk, the forged signatures, all of it. Detective Morrison took notes. Didn't interrupt. And when I finished, she said, "Do you have any direct communication from Mrs. Foster regarding the house? Text messages, emails, anything?" I pulled out my phone. There were texts from Clarissa, dozens of them. I'd never deleted anything, old librarian habit of keeping records. "Look at these," I said, scrolling back to March. "She's asking about my future plans. About whether I've thought about next steps. Here, this one from April, right after I got out of the hospital. So glad you're home safe. We should discuss the house situation soon. There are options that would make everyone's life easier." "Options," Detective Morrison repeated. Vague enough to seem innocent, specific enough to show intent. She photographed the messages with her own phone. "What about financial records? Bank statements showing unauthorized access?" "I have those too." I'd brought everything. The statements showing Clarissa's name added as an authorized user. The small charges I didn't make. The transfer of $5,000 from my savings to an account I didn't recognize. "When did you notice this transfer?" the detective asked. "Last week. When I finally looked at my statements carefully." "And you never authorized it?" "Never." She made more notes. "Mrs. Rowe, I'm going to be straight with you. What you're describing is a pattern of financial exploitation and deed fraud. It's serious. But cases like this can be complicated, especially when family is involved. Defense attorneys will claim you gave permission, that you were confused, that family members were trying to help an elderly relative who couldn't manage alone." "I know. I'd prepared myself for this. But I have proof I didn't sign those documents. Hospital records, timestamps, everything." "You do. And that's strong. I'm going to open a case. It'll take time, but we'll investigate thoroughly." After she left, Rena made tea neither of us drank. We just sat at her table, surrounded by papers and evidence and the weight of what came next. "Clarissa doesn't know yet," Rena said. "About the investigation. About us finding all this. She thinks her plan is still working. She'll know soon enough." "Are you ready for that? For the confrontation?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. I've been ready since the moment I found those documents. I just didn't know it yet. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in months. I gardened. Really gardened, not just watering but pruning, weeding, turning soil. The azaleas Lionel and I planted were getting ready for next spring, storing energy in their roots. I felt like those azaleas. Storing energy. Preparing. Monday morning, Mr. Halvorson called. The metadata came back from the tech analyst. The deed transfer document was created on a computer registered to Clarissa Foster's marketing firm. The file properties show it was saved multiple times over several weeks, with different versions of your signature. "They practiced," I said. "They practiced." Which means premeditation. Which means this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake. It was planned, calculated fraud. I sat down, let that sink in. My own family had spent weeks practicing my signature. Perfecting the crime. making sure every detail was right before they struck. There's something else, Mr. Halvorsen continued. The real estate company they contacted about selling your house? I called them. Clarissa had scheduled a listing appointment for next month. Already had professional photos taken of your property. The realtor thought she was your daughter helping an elderly mother prepare to move. The pieces kept falling into place. Every single step had been planned. The nursing home bed, the sale, the listing. All of it arranged before I was supposed to know what was happening. When should I expect them? I asked. Clarissa and the notary. When do you think they'll make their move? Soon. The property freeze blocked their timeline. They need you to sign something to override it, or they need to wait until the freeze expires. My guess? They'll try to pressure you into signing before that happens. Then I'll be ready. I transferred the most important documents to Detective Morrison. Sent copies to my own lawyer for safekeeping. Put originals in a safety deposit box Clarissa didn't know about. I was building my own paper trail now. Creating my own legal fortress. And when she finally came to my door, thinking she'd win with confidence and official-looking papers, she'd find something she didn't expect. Resistance. Evidence. And a calm old woman who'd already won. When the knock finally came on my door, I was ready. The knock came on a Thursday morning. Early, before the newspaper arrived. I was in the kitchen, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint my backyard gold. 3 sharp raps. Purposeful. Impatient. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head a dozen times. Still, my heart hammered when I walked to the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see 2 silhouettes. One tall and slim. One shorter, stockier, holding a briefcase. I smoothed my cardigan and opened the door. Clarissa stood on my porch like she owned it. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Beside her was a man in his 50s, gray suit, nervous eyes, holding that briefcase like it contained something precious. Delphine. Clarissa's smile was sharp. This is Mr. Hendricks. He's a notary, and we have some important paperwork that needs your signature. Important paperwork. I kept my voice level. What kind of paperwork? Just some corrections to your property documents. Simple administrative fixes. She gestured like it was nothing. We've been trying to handle this quietly, but there were some filing errors at the county office. We need to correct them before they become a bigger problem. Filing errors. That's how she was playing it. Mr. Hendricks shifted uncomfortably. He had the look of someone who'd been told this was routine, who was only now starting to suspect otherwise. May we come in? Clarissa asked, already moving forward. I didn't step aside. Actually, I think we should go somewhere else first. Her smile faltered. Just slightly. Excuse me. The police station. I have an appointment with Detective Morrison. She's very interested in these filing errors you mentioned. The color drained from Clarissa's face. Not all at once. Slowly, like water leaking from a cracked vessel. Mr. Hendricks blinked. Police. There seems to be some confusion, Clarissa said quickly, her voice tight. Delphine, you're not thinking clearly. The stress of maintaining this house at your age. At my age, I'm 72. And my mind is perfectly clear. I pulled my phone from my cardigan pocket. Clear enough to document forged signatures. Clear enough to obtain hospital records proving I couldn't have signed documents you claim I did. Clear enough to freeze my property so it can't be sold without a court order. Clarissa's mask cracked. The polite daughter-in-law dissolved, replaced by something colder. You had no right to do that. Everett and I are trying to help you. We're trying to protect you from making mistakes. By forging my signature? By accessing my bank accounts without permission? By filing fraudulent deeds? I stepped forward. She stepped back. That's not help, Clarissa. That's theft. Mr. Hendricks was backing toward his car. Mrs. Foster, you told me this was a standard estate planning session. You said your mother-in-law was expecting us. She is my mother-in-law, and she's confused. I'm standing right here, I said. And I'm not confused. I'm angry. There's a difference. Delphine. Clarissa's voice took on a pleading tone, a last desperate attempt at manipulation. Think about Everett. Think about your son. Do you really want to destroy your relationship with him over a misunderstanding? I'm not the one who destroyed it. You did. When you decided my house was worth more than my dignity. A car pulled up to the curb. Detective Morrison stepped out, badge visible on her belt. She'd been waiting down the street, ready to intervene if needed. Mrs. Foster? The detective said, walking up the path. I'm Detective Morrison. I think we need to have a conversation. Clarissa's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, fear, anger. Then, finally, calculation. She was already planning her defense, her story, her version of events where she was the victim. I want my lawyer, she said. That's your right. Detective Morrison looked at Mr. Hendricks. Sir, I'm going to need those documents you're carrying. They may be evidence in an ongoing investigation. The notary practically threw the briefcase at her. I didn't know. She told me it was legitimate. I never would have. That's fine, sir. We'll need a statement from you, but you're not under investigation at this time. He fled to his car like it was on fire. Clarissa stood alone on my porch now, her perfect composure shattered. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to help my mother-in-law, and I'm being treated like a criminal. Are you? I asked quietly. Trying to help? Because the bank records show $5,000 transferred from my account to one in your name. The county records show deed transfers I never authorized. The metadata shows documents created on your computer. So please, Clarissa, explain how that's helping. She opened her mouth. Closed it. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing to say. Detective Morrison gestured to her car. Mrs. Foster, let's continue this conversation at the station. They left. Clarissa in the detective's car, her expensive suit and perfect hair looking wrong somehow against the institutional gray interior. Mr. Hendricks had already fled, leaving his briefcase behind like evidence at a crime scene. I stood on my porch, my house behind me, my garden stretching out to the street, and felt the morning sun warm on my face. I'd won. Not the war, not yet. But this battle. This moment. I'd stood my ground and they'd blinked first. Inside, my phone rang. Everett's number. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever he had to say, whatever excuses or accusations he wanted to throw at me, could wait. Right now, I needed to breathe. To feel my own front porch under my feet. To know that no one was taking this from me. But this was only Act 1. The public unraveling hadn't even begun. And I'd learned enough from Rena and Mr. Halvorsen to know that the real fight was just starting. Would you have stayed calm like I did, or would you have confronted them the moment you found the forged documents? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happened next tested everything I thought I knew about family and justice. Word travels fast in a small town. By Friday afternoon, everyone knew. At the county recorder's office, the clerks whispered when Clarissa's name came up. At Everett's workplace, where he managed regional accounts for an insurance company, colleagues started asking uncomfortable questions. And at church, where Clarissa had been so visible, so involved, the whispers floated through the sanctuary like incense. Did you hear? She tried to steal her mother-in-law's house. Forged signatures. While the poor woman was in the hospital. Her own husband's mother. Can you imagine? I didn't spread the story. Didn't need to. The police investigation was public record. The property freeze was filed at the courthouse. And in a town where everyone knew everyone, secrets didn't last long. Clarissa stopped going to her office. Stopped appearing at the coffee shops where she used to hold her business meetings. When I saw her at the grocery store, she turned her cart around and went the other direction, her head down, her perfect posture finally crumbling. Everett called 17 times that first week. I answered once. Mom. His voice was rough, exhausted. We need to talk. Do we? Clarissa made mistakes. She got carried away. But she wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to plan for your future, to make sure you'd be taken care of. By stealing my house? Silence. Long and heavy. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he finally said. How was it supposed to be, Everett? You tell me. How was taking my home, forging my signature, moving me into a nursing home against my will supposed to be anything other than exactly what it is? You're not getting any younger. The house is too much for you. We were trying to help. That word again. Help. Like a weapon disguised as kindness. If you wanted to help, you could have asked me. Talked to me. Treated me like a person instead of a problem to solve. My voice stayed steady, but anger ran underneath like a current. Instead, you let your wife commit fraud and said nothing. I didn't know how far she'd gone. I swear, Mom, I didn't know about the forged signatures. But you knew about the plan to sell my house. You knew about the nursing home. You knew, and you said nothing. He had no answer for that. Clarissa's lawyer wants to talk, he said after a long pause. About settling this. Quietly. Making it go away before it gets worse. It's already worse, Everett. You just haven't accepted it yet. I hung up. 3 weeks later, a lawyer I'd never met called my house. His name was Patrick Webb, and he represented Clarissa and Everett Foster in the matter of the property dispute. Dispute, Mr. Halvorsen had said when I told him. That's lawyer speak for crime they want to pretend is a disagreement. Mr. Webb's voice was smooth, professional. Mrs. Rowe, my clients want to resolve this matter amicably. They're willing to withdraw all property claims, return any funds that may have been transferred, and sign documents affirming your sole ownership of your home. In exchange for? In exchange for you agreeing not to pursue criminal charges. And signing a non-disclosure agreement regarding the circumstances. A non-disclosure. So they can pretend this never happened. So all parties can move forward without further legal complications. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Part of me wanted to push forward, let the district attorney prosecute, make them face real consequences. But another part, the part that remembered Everett as a little boy helping his father plant those azaleas, that part was tired. I need to see the settlement terms in writing, I said. And I need to discuss it with my attorney. Of course. I'll send everything over today. The documents arrived by courier that evening. 20 pages of legal language that boiled down to this. They admitted no wrongdoing, but they'd give up all claims to my property, return the money they'd taken, and stay away from my affairs. In exchange, I wouldn't press criminal charges and wouldn't discuss the case publicly. Mr. Halvorsen read it twice. It's a decent offer. Better than I expected, honestly. They're scared. They should be. The question is, what do you want? Justice through the courts, or closure on your terms? I looked out his office window at the parking lot below, at people coming and going, living their lives. I want my home. I want my peace. And I want them gone. Then take the settlement. We negotiated some changes. The non-disclosure wouldn't prevent me from discussing the case with law enforcement or in legal proceedings. They'd have no contact with me unless I initiated it. And the property documents would be recorded publicly, showing I was sole owner with no challenges. I signed it on a Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Webb brought the papers himself, watched while I read each page carefully, then notarized my signature. The real kind of notarization, with proper ID and witnesses. It's done, he said, sliding his copy into his briefcase. You won't hear from my clients again. Good. He paused at the door. Mrs. Rowe? For what it's worth, I think you were very brave. Most people in your situation would have been too frightened or confused to fight back. I wasn't confused. I was angry. There's a difference. After he left, I walked out to my garden. The azaleas were dormant now, saving their energy for spring. But their roots were deep anchored, impossible to uproot without destroying them completely. Like me. The next morning, I got the bank notification. $5,000 returned to my account. The unauthorized access removed. My name, and only my name, on every document. I didn't celebrate. Didn't call anyone. Just watered the azaleas even though they didn't need it, feeling the cool soil between my fingers and the autumn sun on my face. They thought that was the end. They thought signing papers and returning money would close this chapter. But they didn't know I'd saved my biggest move for last. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old books. Mr. Pemberton, my estate attorney, laid the updated will across his massive oak desk. You're certain about these changes, Delphine? Completely certain. He read through them one more time, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Your son Everett and his wife Clarissa are removed as beneficiaries. The house and all assets will be divided between your grandchildren's education trusts and the county library literacy program. Everett retains access only to family photos and personal items of sentimental value, nothing financial. That's correct. And you want this recorded with the county, not just filed privately. I want it on public record. I want there to be no question, no room for challenge. He nodded slowly. It's your right. But you understand this will likely damage your relationship with your son beyond repair. He damaged it himself when he stood by while his wife tried to steal my home. I met his eyes. I don't make this decision out of spite, Mr. Pemberton. I make it out of protection. For myself now, and for my grandchildren later. I won't let them inherit a mess. He printed the final version. I signed it with my real signature, the one no one could forge, the one that looped the P in Delphine just so and pressed harder on the downstroke. 3 witnesses signed. The notary stamped it. And just like that, I rewrote my story one last time. When I got home, there was an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single card, the kind you buy at a grocery store. On the front, a watercolor garden. Inside, 2 sentences in handwriting I recognized as Everett's. I'm sorry, Mom. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stood in my kitchen, holding that card, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe never. But something softer than anger. Something that acknowledged he was still my son, even if he'd become someone I didn't recognize. I put the card in a drawer with other things I couldn't throw away but didn't want to see. Then I made tea and sat at my table, the same table where I'd eaten alone for so long, and let myself feel everything. The grief. The betrayal. The victory. The cost of that victory. Because here's what they don't tell you about fighting back. You win, But you lose something too. The illusion of safety. The belief that family means protection. The comfort of thinking the worst can't happen if you keep your head down and stay quiet. I'd won my house. Kept my dignity. Proven I wasn't the confused old woman they tried to paint me as. But I'd also lost my son, at least for now. Lost the grandchildren I barely saw anymore. Lost the fantasy of a warm family gathering around this table at Thanksgiving. The price of justice was loneliness. And some days, I wasn't sure which was worse. But then I'd walk outside and see those azaleas, their buds already forming for spring. I'd sit on my porch and feel the solid wood beneath me. I'd open my bank statement and see my name, only my name, on every line. And I'd remember why I fought. Not for revenge. Not for money. But for the simple, profound right to exist in my own life without someone erasing me. Rena stopped by that Sunday with coffee. Real coffee from the good place downtown, not grocery store cups. We sat on my porch, wrapped in blankets against the November chill. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I'm here. That's something. It's everything." She sipped her coffee. "You know, we get calls every week from people in situations like yours. Elder fraud, financial exploitation, families taking advantage. Most of them don't fight back. Why not? Fear. Shame. They think no one will believe them. Or they don't want to admit their own children would hurt them." She looked at me. "You gave them a roadmap. Proof that it's possible to win. It doesn't feel like winning sometimes." "No. But it's still victory." Mr. Halvorsen came by too, bringing a fruit basket he probably got from some client and didn't know what to do with. We ate pears in my kitchen while he told me about other cases, other fights, other people who'd stood their ground. "You did good work, Delphine," he said. "Clean, documented, irrefutable. That's how you beat them. With paper and timestamps. With truth. Truth leaves traces. Lies have gaps. You just have to look carefully enough to find them." He set down his pear core. "What will you do now?" "I don't know. Garden. Read. Maybe volunteer at the library again." "You should. They'd be lucky to have you." After he left, I thought about that. Going back to the library. Not as staff, but as a volunteer helping with literacy programs. Teaching people to read, to understand documents, to protect themselves with knowledge. Maybe that's how I turned this nightmare into something useful. By helping others avoid the trap I almost fell into. Winter came. The azaleas went dormant, conserving energy beneath the soil. I shoveled my own walkway, ignored my neighbor's offers to help because I needed to prove I could still do it myself. I decorated for Christmas with the same ornaments Lionel and I had collected over 40 years. And I was alone. But not lonely. Not anymore. Because loneliness comes from isolation. From feeling invisible and unheard. But I'd been seen. Believed. Supported by Rena and Mr. Halvorsen and Detective Morrison and even that nervous notary who'd realized something was wrong. I'd learned something crucial in those months of fighting. You don't need many people. You just need the right people. The ones who listen when you speak. Who believe you when others doubt. Who stand beside you when standing alone feels impossible. On Christmas Eve, I got a package. No return address again, but postmarked from 2 states away. Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Everett as a boy, maybe 8 years old, holding a small azalea plant. Lionel stood beside him, teaching him how to dig the hole, how to place the roots, how to pat down the soil. On the back, in Everett's handwriting, "I remember this day." I remember him teaching me that things worth having are worth protecting. I'm sorry I forgot that lesson when it mattered most. I put the photo on my mantelpiece, next to Lionel's. Not forgiveness, not yet. But acknowledgement. That people are complicated. That they can hurt you and love you and fail you and still be worth remembering. Spring came like a promise. The azaleas bloomed, pink and white and full, just like they always did. I sat on my porch with my morning coffee and watched neighbors walk by, their dogs pulling on leashes, their kids riding bikes. A young woman stopped at my gate. She looked tired, worn down, familiar in a way I couldn't place. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Delphine Rowe?" "I am. I heard about what happened. With your daughter-in-law. With your house." She twisted her hands together. "Something similar is happening to my mom. And I don't know how to help her. I don't know how to fight back." I looked at her, this stranger who'd sought me out, and saw myself 6 months ago. Scared. Overwhelmed. Thinking she was alone. "Come in," I said. "I'll make tea. And I'll tell you everything." So I did. I told her about documentation. About finding allies. About the power of staying calm when others want you to panic. About how metadata doesn't lie and truth leaves traces and silence is the enemy's weapon, never yours. She left with photocopies of my timeline, phone numbers for Rena and Mr. Halvorsen, and something more important. Hope. That's when I understood. This wasn't just my story. It was a pattern, playing out in houses across the country. Elders being erased by the people who should protect them. And most of them never fought back because they didn't know they could. But now they knew. Because I'd fought. And won. And refused to stay quiet about it. The azaleas bloomed brighter that year, or maybe I just noticed them more. Each flower was proof that beauty returns after dormancy. That roots hold strong even when everything above ground looks dead. I am still here. In my house, with my garden, with my story. And no forged signature, no manipulative daughter-in-law, no scheme dressed up as care could erase that. Quiet justice doesn't roar. It doesn't demand attention or make grand speeches. It whispers, steady and unbroken, through courtrooms and county offices and kitchen tables where scared people realize they don't have to fight alone. It whispers, document everything. Find your people. Stay calm. Trust the truth. It whispers, you are not confused. You are not a burden. You are not too old to matter. And most importantly, it whispers, I am still here. You will not erase me. 6 months after the settlement, I got a letter from the district attorney's office. They were investigating another case, similar pattern, same real estate company Clarissa had contacted. They wanted to know if I'd testify about what happened to me. I said yes. Not for revenge. Not to punish Everett. But because my silence would protect the people who prey on others like me. And I was done being silent. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like on television. Just fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, and a judge who looked bored until I started talking. Then she leaned forward, listening. I told my story. Showed my evidence. Explained how easy it had been for someone to almost steal everything while everyone assumed I was too old to notice or too weak to fight back. When I finished, the defendant's lawyer had no questions. What could he ask? The documents spoke for themselves. We won that case too. And 3 others that followed. Each time, I sat in that uncomfortable chair and told the truth until it became undeniable. People started calling me. Strangers who'd heard about the librarian who fought back. Adult children worried about their parents. Elders who suspected something was wrong but didn't trust their own instincts. I talked to all of them. Shared what I'd learned. Connected them with Rena and Mr. Halvorsen and Detective Morrison. Built a network of people who refused to let others be erased. And somewhere in all of that, I stopped being lonely. Not because my son came back, he didn't, not really. We exchanged cards on birthdays, stiff and formal. The grandchildren were teenagers now, busy with their own lives, caught in the middle of something they didn't fully understand. But I had purpose. Community. The knowledge that my fight meant something beyond just keeping my house. 2 years after that morning on my porch, I stood in front of the county commission. They were voting on new protections for elder property rights, regulations that would make it harder to forge signatures, easier to verify identities, mandatory reporting for suspicious transfers. This legislation exists because of people like Delphine Rowe, the commissioner said, who refused to be victims, who fought back with evidence and truth and courage. The measure passed unanimously. I didn't cry, just smiled. Because that's what quiet justice looks like. Not a single dramatic moment, but hundreds of small victories building on each other until the system itself changes. Now, when I sit on my porch with my morning coffee, I see the azaleas Lionel and I planted. I see the house we built our lives in. I see neighbors who wave, strangers who stop to ask advice, a community that knows my story and respects it. And I think about all the people out there right now, sitting in houses that don't feel safe anymore, wondering if they're paranoid, if they're confused, if anyone would believe them if they spoke up. I want them to know something. Your instincts are right. Your feelings are valid. You are not confused. Documentation is power. Allies are essential. Calm is your armor. And most importantly, you are still here. You matter. Your story matters. Your home, your dignity, your right to exist in your own life, these things are worth fighting for. The people who try to erase you count on your silence, on your shame, on your fear that speaking up will make things worse. But here's the truth they don't want you to know: speaking up is the only thing that makes it better. I'm 74 now. My knees hurt more than they used to. I forget names sometimes, misplace my reading glasses, need help opening stubborn jars. But I'm not confused. I'm not helpless. I'm not a problem to be solved or a burden to be managed. I'm Delphine Rowe. I live in my house. I tend my garden. And every spring, when those azaleas bloom pink and white against the morning sun, they bloom for Lionel. For me. And for every person who's ever been told they don't matter. They bloom for the truth that no forged signature can bury. I am still here. And I'm not going anywhere. If this story touched you, if you've experienced something similar or know someone who has, please share it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And most importantly, drop a comment below. Share your thoughts. Tell your story. Inspire others who might be fighting their own battles right now. Because quiet justice starts with one person refusing to stay silent. And it grows every time someone else decides to speak up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, you matter. Your story matters. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Stay strong. Stay vigilant. And never, ever let them erase you.